Welcome Life Science learners to another installment. Trust that you guys are well and looking forward to our lesson today. In our lesson today, we're going to be focusing on nutrition and specifically looking at homeostasis, disorders and different diets. It's important that at this point we're able to reflect on the process that has happened in the process of nutrition. We've reflected on the process of chemical digestion. Today we're going to look at what happens in the body to maintain the balance when food is absorbed into the cells as the building blocks. And that's important in us understanding what homeostasis is. So let's have an overview of the main concepts. Let's unpack some terminology, and then we will look at those important organs that maintain the process of homeostasis. Let's get straight into the lesson, folks. So guys, as I mentioned, we've got to start off always by looking at some important terms. And I'd like to review the core concepts of our lesson before we move further on. It's important that we understand and recollect the overview process of digestion, and that's fundamental and important to understanding any process relating to nutrition. So understanding what happens during digestion is important. Again, it's important that we look at the organs, both the important parts of the digestive system as well as the accessory organs that are associated with the alimentary canal. We're going to spend some time unpacking what homeostasis is and its role in controlling the blood glucose level. It's important that we understand that there are different mechanisms in the body that maintain what we refer to as the body in a normal condition. So having excess glucose, amino acids, fatty acids and glycerol are important and can create abnormalities in the body. So the body has to constantly maintain what we refer to as a constant internal environment, and that term is homeostasis. We also will spend some time looking at different diets, and we do know that obviously this is influenced culturally as well as by choice of people in terms of what they eat. And so we will look at some different diets that people adopt, as well as we'll look at some nutritional disorders and what is a disorder and how that is affected by the diet that we consume. And finally, we're going to spend some time looking at what allergies are, supplements, as well as reading nutritional information. And we often buy food products and we see a little table of all the different nutrients on them. It's important that you understand what that table means. And so we'll spend some time looking at that nutritional information that we see on the packaging. And finally, we'll hopefully get to some revision activities where we can apply some of our understanding that we've had through the lesson in attempting a few questions based on that. So let's get straight into looking at some important terminology. As I mentioned, the term homeostasis, if we break up the word homeostasis, it refers to two words, home, which refers to environment, and stasis, again, refers to a process of being constant. So if you were to unpack that, it's the ability of an organism to maintain stable internal conditions or environments. And this is important for us to be able to recognize. We talk about the body temperature being constant. So that's one homeostasis mechanism that the body carries out, keeping the body at a constant temperature. We also know that there is a chemical balance that the body needs to maintain. And that's with regards to the balance of the pH of blood, the amount of oxygen, the amount of carbon dioxide. All those need to be perfectly managed in balance. And this occurs by a process, as I mentioned, called homeostasis. There is a mechanism that controls this process, and that mechanism is called the negative feedback mechanism. Guys, another word for negative is opposite. So if you think about that, so it's an opposite process. Feedback is, again, a process that refers to giving a reply to, a response to. So again, let's unpack negative meaning and opposite. Feedback would be a reply. So if we look at that, these are mechanisms in the human body that respond or detect changes or imbalances in the internal conditions and restore that balance. So let me give you an example of that. So when we consume a meal, we know that during the process of digestion that the carbohydrates will be broken up into simple sugars such as glucose. The sugar levels will gradually increase, and so at a point it becomes higher than normal. So the mechanisms in the body respond to that increase in level to bring the body back to a balance. And that balance we refer to as is homeostasis. So we will spend some time looking at the negative feedback mechanism in maintaining a constant internal environment. Blood glucose is a concept that we will unpack, and we talk about blood glucose, and sometimes we tend to use the word your sugar levels. Well, that's correct, but I'd like to remind you that what we referred to is the glucose molecules in the blood. Remember that ultimately, after a meal, your complex molecules are broken down into their simplest molecules. Carbohydrates are broken down into glucose molecules, which then flow in the bloodstream to be absorbed by the cells to be used for cellular respiration. So that is what blood glucose refers to. And essentially there is a level of blood glucose that we refer to as being within the norm or normal. So we will have to look at what normal blood glucose levels are and how the body maintains that within a balance. We're going to spend some time looking at two important hormones, insulin and glucagon. And these are hormones again that are responsible for maintaining the blood sugar levels in the body. And finally, we're going to talk about a complex form of a carbohydrate which is called glycogen. And glycogen again is a complex carbohydrate. Essentially, the glucose is converted and stored in the body as a complex form of a carbohydrate called glycogen. Okay? As we get into this lesson, we've got to review the process of digestion. Remember that the process of digestion occurs across the body in several different stages. The first stage is ingestion, and if you remember, ingestion is the taking in of food through the mouth. The second process is digestion, and if we recall, digestion again means breaking that down. And digestion happens through two processes: a physical breakdown, which happens in the mouth where we chew our food, as well as a chemical breakdown, which happens using enzymes. And that refers to digestion. And once digestion occurs, we know that the food has been broken up into its simplest molecules. We would then need to absorb those nutrients, the building blocks of those complex molecules, into the bloodstream and then transport them to cells where they are assimilated, meaning used up. And finally, we talk about egestion, which is the release of the parts that have not been used or parts that are not needed by the body. And so we refer to that as egestion. So to sum that up, here's a simple flow diagram that shows you the process of digestion and what happens in the body. It's important as we get into the lesson that I'll remind you of the organs that play an important role. In our lesson today, we're going to focus on the pancreas and its role in maintaining homeostasis. Again, if we recollect that the pancreas is an accessory organ, meaning that food does not pass through it, but it is important in producing important enzymes and hormones in assisting the digestive system carrying out its function. So as an overview, guys, remember that we're focusing on homeostasis and the role of the pancreas. So the pancreas has two important roles. One is that it produces digestive enzymes, and these enzymes are released into the duodenum, which is the first part of the small intestine, and those enzymes play an important role in chemical digestion. We also know that the pancreas plays an important endocrine function. Endocrine refers to the production of hormones, and so this organ has cells that produce hormones such as insulin and glucagon, and we will discuss that in a bit. And so we see how important the pancreas is in this process, which we're going to discuss in a bit. So guys, we've had an overview of the pancreas in terms of its function. Let's have a little break, and when we get back, we will look at the pancreas in detail and understand how homeostasis occurs. See you in a bit.